Hi everybody, this is Miss Rose. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to find a midpoint when you're dealing with coordinates on a graph. There's a midpoint formula, but Mr. Millington and I are typically bigger fans of understanding what you're doing and thinking through the problem rather than memorizing a formula. So you'll see what I mean later on in the lesson. Here's the first graph that we're going to look at. You'll notice that AB is a horizontal line segment. So if I want to find the midpoint of AB, I definitely don't need any sort of formula. I could probably just count and see how long that line segment is. So to get from A to B is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 units long. So the midpoint is the halfway point. So if I count half of 14 is 7 units. So if I count 7 units away from A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Look, it's perfectly in the middle. If you folded segment AB in half, that would be the point where the fold was at. So a lot of times we call that M for the midpoint. So I definitely didn't need any sort of formula or calculation for that one. What about if the line segment isn't horizontal? So let's take a look at this one. Well, I feel like I could kind of do a similar method. I could kind of use the slope and go halfway. So to get from C to D, you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, down 6, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I go down half of 6, and I go over to the right half of 8, I could get to my halfway point. I'll switch colors and do that. I could go down just 3 and over 4, and ta-da, there's my halfway point. So I'll call that one M. So I haven't needed a formula so far, but what do I do if I give you points and they're not on a grid? That's all of a sudden where we're going to need a little bit more of a method. I guess from what you could tell for the first one, that one actually it's not a horizontal line segment this time, it's vertical. The x coordinates are both the same. They're both 5. So if you picture a graph where one point's up at 513 and one point's down at 5, -19, the midpoint's definitely going to be at 5 something. So I don't really need to do any calculations for the x coordinate. But when it comes to the y coordinate, here's where the formula part comes in. I want to know what's halfway in between -19 and 13. Whenever I'm looking for a halfway point, that's kind of like taking the average. So here's where the calculating part is going to come in. If you remember learning about how to take an average back in the day, you take, if there's 2 things, you add them up and you divide by 2. You always add up your items and divide by the number of items that there are. So I could just add up -19 and 13 and then divide by 2, and that'll give me the y coordinate of my point. Here's the tricky part though. If you type that into the calculator all at once, your calculator is actually going to think you're doing -19 plus 13 halves. So here's what I would recommend. I would recommend going -19 plus 13 and hitting the equal sign, then doing divided by 2. If you want to do it all in one step, you can, but you would have to put parentheses around the -19 and the 13. So -19 plus 13 is -6, and you divide that by 2 and you get -3. So our midpoint is at 5, -3. What I always do to double check is I just make sure that that makes sense. I make sure that -3 really is in between -19 and 13, and it is. All right, what do I do about a line segment that's not horizontal or vertical? Well, we need to use our new averaging idea for the x's and for the y's. So for the x's, if I average the x coordinates, I would add them up and divide by 2. That'll give me my x coordinate. Then when I want to know the y coordinate, I will add those up and divide by 2. So I'll show you one more time what to do with that in the calculator. It was -26 and -14. -26 plus -14. That did not do what I was asking it to do. -14 All right, hit equals, then divide by 2, and that gives you negative 20. All right, then I could do the same thing for the y's. Negative 10 plus 27. I'll do this one without the calculator. Negative 10 plus 27 is 17. 17 divided by 2 is 8.5. So that might make you a little bit nervous that you get a decimal, but it makes sense. If you're looking for what's halfway in between an even number and an odd number, you always get something with a 0.5 in it. So our midpoint that we end up with is, be really careful with the order. The x's were the red ones, so I have to put that number first. And then the y's were the blue ones, so I put that number second. And that's my midpoint. I have one more problem for you guys. This one's a little bit trickier. Remember, m was the midpoint. So in the previous two problems, I asked you to find the midpoint. This one, I actually gave you the midpoint. We have some sort of segment AB. And instead of giving you A and B and asking you for M, I actually gave you M. I have a cool strategy for this one that I like, so I'll show you that and see if you like it. There's also some algebraic ways to do this too. I actually just take a look at the X values and I see how far apart they are. So from 15 to 1, I go down 14. So if you just go down 14 more, that'll get you your X coordinate for B. So 15 minus 14 is 1. 1 minus 14 is negative 13. Then I do the same thing for the Y coordinates. So to get from 29 to 16, you go down 13. So then I'm going to go down 13 again. 16 minus 13 is 3. Maybe when I'm rethinking how I was describing this, because the red ones were X values, maybe instead of going down 14, maybe I should say left 14. I just said down because I was subtracting. So that's the solution to the problem. So that's one kind of painless way to do it. If you prefer doing it algebraically, you could too. You could do something like 15 plus X divided by 2 gives you the X coordinate. 29 plus y divided by 2 gives you the y coordinate of the midpoint, and you could solve algebraically. So I'll just show you really quickly how you would do that. Since I'm dividing by 2, you could multiply both sides by 2. And then you would just subtract 15 from both sides, and you'll notice that we're going to get the same exact answer for our X coordinate that we got before. So when I'm doing these problems, I tend to not do it in an algebraic way. I try to just kind of be clever and play with the numbers. So that's a brief rundown of the midpoint formula. And now we'll practice doing that a little bit more with coordinates. Thanks.